Good morning. May I introduce myself? My name is Bernd Jodossi. I'm pre-sales at Digora Luxembourg. I welcome you to this web seminar. So very quickly, an introduction about what we'll do today. So we have the pleasure to have today Mike Dietrich with us, who will talk about upgrades, migrations, and consolidation on Oracle Database 19C. But before that, just 2 words about Digora. Digora is actually an Oracle partner for a long time. Ora in our name comes actually from Oracle. So since its beginning, Digora has been active with Oracle products and has a lot of experience with it. We are actually also present in Luxembourg now since 5 years. So that's also one of the reasons why we wanted in March to organize an event together with Mike. But unfortunately, for the reasons you all know, we couldn't make that. So after trying to organize that in March, in June, and finally in November, we finally decided to transform that in a webinar. So that's of course not the optimal way of doing this kind of event, because normally Mike is doing this kind of workshops in a full day. So we'll now make a more concentrated version of it. And in the next 2 hours, Mike will talk about everything which you should take care when moving to 19C. Well, a few words about Mike, who will introduce himself for sure later, more in detail. As you can see, he's distinguished product manager for Oracle upgrades and migrations. I know Mike already since a very long time. Actually, I looked in my archives and I checked when he first came to Luxembourg. That was in 2004, talking about upgrades to 10G. We had then the pleasure to have him in Luxembourg in 2006 talking about 10G release 2, and then in 2014 about 11G R2, and now it's time to talk about 90C. So thank you, Mike, for accepting our invitation, to accept also to reschedule that several times and now finally do it in this form. The advantage is, of course, that we don't have only people from Luxembourg, but also a lot of people from France and even, I would say, from all Europe, even from Brazil and India, which are now connected to this. So we have now really a global reach where you can talk about all what you know about 90C. So I hand it now over to you, and the next 2 hours, you can also ask questions in the chat window or in the question and answer, and Mike will then in the break go over them and try to answer most of them. And at the end, again, we have a bit of time reserved to ask questions. Last thing, we'll have also, as we are kind of celebrating the 5 years of Oracle, at the end have a small quiz. So listen carefully, because some of the questions will also be addressed during the presentation.
Yeah, Mike? Thank you, Bernd.
Yeah.
Thank you, and welcome to today's web seminar. And thanks, Bernd, for the very nice introduction. I remember back the days when I had an event at Trier, and Bernd, we never met before, in 2004, and he contacted me and said, if you're coming to Trier, you should stop by in Luxembourg. This was the idea, and since then we met, and yeah, in person would be better, but we do the best. And I know the 2 hours will be very long already, so not for me, but for you, sitting there and staring at a screen. We will do a break after approximately 1 hour for 5 minutes, so you can refresh your coffee or whatever is needed. And in these 5 minutes, I will try to answer the questions you put into the Q&A, if you have questions. And we have such a slot at the end of the web seminar as well reserved. When I present later, when I go into the slides, I will hide my video because I get always this strange message here that I have bad network quality. So just in order not to harm the broadcasting, I will do that. But for the introduction, I will stay online. So Bernd read my title already, and I always wonder about this title. If you wonder as well, yeah, with all the Black Lives Matters things going on in the US, even in Oracle, we decided, oh, there are a few titles which don't work so well. So before I was a master product manager, and some people assume if there is a master, there must be a slave somewhere. I confess there are no slaves around here. We have a nice upgrade team. I work for more than 13 years now. And I'm quite a while working for and in Oracle. Actually, in 5 days, I will have my 24th anniversary at Oracle. So time really flies. If you intend to follow me on Twitter, no worries. My Twitter timeline is absolutely safe because I use Twitter solely for technical things, never for politics or other things which may not be in your interest. You can get in touch with me also on LinkedIn. So just use Mike Dietrich, then you get to my LinkedIn profile. And for the upgrade blog itself, this is where you get the slides. The slide deck I'm using right now is not uploaded. My colleague just prepared me a PDF. I just received a message on Slack. So after the event, give me around until 1 p.m. and then you'll find a brand new slides. Way more slides than we can show today. We have just 2 hours. The entire slide deck is about 500 something slides. And we have now a separate slide deck for cloud migrations, but you get them all on the upgrade blog, MikeDietrich.de. And as I said, MikeDietrich.de is my Twitter handle as well. So for me, times are also a bit different. Bernd mentioned it before when we had a private chat before the event. Typically, I spent quite a while in airplanes. Now I'm grounded. I live in Germany, a little bit outside of Munich, in a very nice area, very close to the mountains. And yeah, for today, I will go now hide my video to increase the network bandwidth. And let me go on from here. So for today, what I prepared, we start with release and patching strategy, and then we cover upgrade to 19C. Then I will do a 5-minute break around, should be in about 60 minutes from here on, 45, 50. I can't tell this actually absolutely precisely up front, but something around that. So in the middle, there will be a break. Then after the break, we do ensure performance stability. So I would like to guide you through how to make sure you have great performance when you upgrade and stability. And then we cover also the migration to multi-tenant and the different aspects. So I will just start here and explain at first why you want to upgrade. And typically I tell people that it's not you wanting to upgrade, it's either you have to upgrade or we want you to upgrade. And the simple reason is in the lifetime support policy. So when you look at this slide here, you see that 11.2, and this is actually 11.204, will go out of extended support in a few weeks. So end of this year, also the extended support for 11.204 ends. For 11.203, which Bernd mentioned in his introduction, there's no bug fixing support since 27th of August 2015, so for more than 5 years. Just in case you still have one or the other 11.203 database around or something older. If you definitely need to stay on 11.204, but you need to cover at least security and severity 1 bug fixes, there's an offering from support together with development called market-driven support. So the extended support is an extra cost thing, and market-driven support is also an extra cost thing. If you have a ULA agreement with Oracle, a Universal License Agreement, then you always can include extended support at no extra cost. Just talk to your Oracle sales rep. This is just an administration task on our side. And then if you have a ULA or a pooler, you have extended support already included. We just have to free this in your contract, and then you can download for the period of the extended support as well, which, as you can see with 12.102, lasts for 12.102 until mid of 2022. So this is actually the release most of our customers are on. At the moment, we see this from the service request numbers and also from the patch downloads. But of course, we see also a trending towards the 12.2 release family. And before I speak about 12.201, 18C, which is 12.202, and 19C, which is 12.203, let me explain something upfront. And this is something which is very important for you. Oracle 19C is the long-term support release. That means it has at least 5 years of premier support and followed by at least 3 years of extended support with the same rules. So extra cost for those who have no ULA or pooler, and if you have a ULA or pooler, you just can include that. All the releases after 19C directly will be innovation releases at the beginning. That means the next release, whatever the release number is, Larry Ellison will announce this in the, I think, first week or second week of December. There should be a big event. That is an innovation release. And an innovation release, and this is very important to understand, has only 2 years of premier support and no extended support. So for you, that means clearly you move from long-term, from 19C to the next long-term support release. This is your goal. And if you have, or if you spot cool functionality, really important things, for instance, blockchain tables or other new cool features, you may give them to the application teams to develop a new version of the application with an innovation release. But for the rollout in production, you will consider the long-term support releases. And when we go back to the 12.2 family, that means here 12.201 goes out of premier support in 5 days. So when I have my 24th anniversary with Oracle, 12.201 has left the premier support period. Now, as we did a strange thing, we changed the release numbering within the release family. A lot of people understood 12.201 is 12.2, the second release, and we go live on that one. And we didn't do this very well because when you looked in our official Oracle Lifetime Support Policy brochure, what Oracle support releases, it had 12.2 just at the beginning and no distinction between 12.201, 18, and 19. So as we have still a lot of people on 12.201, we added at no extra cost, this is very important, limited error correction support for 12.201. So don't panic. If you're on 12.201 right now, you can stay. You should move to 19C clearly, but we added almost 1.5 years of buffer here, which is called limited error correction support. It applies to security and severity 1 bug fixes. And you get also release updates, and you get patch bundles on top of release updates if you need them. So all good, just severity 2 or lower severity bug fixes won't be included, but still you have sort of protection with no extra cost here involved. If you're on 18, 18 is 12.202. 18 strictly goes out of bug fixing, premier support, bug fixing support, the end of June 2021. So be aware of that. This is just 7 months from now on. And 19C is in premier support until end of April 2024. So this is really the release you should target with potentially 3 years of extension. And we give you also enough overlap to move from 19C then to the next long-term support release, whatever that will be. So we did this strange change here with the release format. We had 5 numbers before in the old format, like 12.2 or 1.0, and we never used the 3rd and the 5th number for the database. And so we decided we changed this to year, like 19 is 2019, .update, .revision, and I'll explain in a minute what update and revision exactly means. But the new format is now 99.0, which I like a lot. Because if you drop me an email or you call me, I know exactly on which patch level you are already. So this makes life really easier. The problem was just that we did this within a release family without proper communication attached to it, telling you clearly what is behind 18 and 19. Now, when we distinct between patch and upgrade, when we patch a database, we use always opatch or opatch auto to patch the binaries, and this will change the 2nd or the 3rd number. So 19.3 to 19.9, this is a patch. But when we go and upgrade the database, which means the database will have always downtime in an upgrade, then we change the 1st number, so 18 to 19. For the upgrade, we use AutoUpgrade or DB-upgrade. I will come to this later on. But patch versus upgrade. Upgrade always means downtime. Patch in a rack environment, you can patch always rolling, and it doesn't change the 1st number of the release. Now, patching in the old days, in the 12.2 days, was a bit, how should I say, you had to make a decision. So you had the black bar, the base release, and on the left side of the slide, you'll see the patch set updates, PSUs, and they were, as every other patch bundles, cumulative. So when you took the patch set update 2, you had patch set update 1 included, plus the black bars here, the security and the new regression fixes. And on the right side of the slide, you see the patch bundles or bundle patches, BPs, and they include the patch set updates, plus optimizer fixes off by default and potential functional fixes, and generally, definitively more fixes than a PSU. The burden with that strategy in 12.1 or 11.2 was simply that customers with PSUs ended up with a hell of one-off fixes on top. And so we recommended with 12.1, because with 12.1, you were allowed to either choose PSUs or BPs also for non-engineered systems. And we tried to recommend customers the BPs, but people were like nostalgic or just kept their patterns and went forward with PSUs. So to give you a scary example, one of my lead customers, an automotive customer in Germany, they have 126 one-off patches on top of a 12.102 PSU. This is how it ends when you stayed with PSU. So we make a cut now, and the cut starts with 12.2 onwards. We move now to release updates and to release update revisions. And there are no PSUs anymore. So you have the base release, and update 1 is exactly, or release update 1 is exactly what the bundle patches were before. Same content, security, regression fixes, optimizer fixes off by default, functional fixes. That was a BP before, no PSUs anymore. A quarter later, we release update 2, and again, they're cumulative. So you see, with yellow bars, we add our new optimizer fixes, new functional fixes, and in black here, new security and regression fixes. But at the same time, when we release update 2, we release also revision 1, this is marked in red here, on top of update 1, which adds only now the new security and the new regression fixes, these black bars. And 3 months later, we add now update 3, which doesn't even fit on the slide here anymore. We add the revision 1 for update 2, and we add also the revision 2 on the right side of the slide for update 1. Now it's important, there's no revision 3 coming. There's always a maximum of 2 revisions, and I'll tell you later what you should do and why I disrecommend ever using the revisions. And before I give you a clear insight, let me do a timeline example, because I think with a timeline example, you understand clearly and easily what that concept is all about and what your choices are. So I start here with an example where we go back in time for 2 years and a bit, when everything was still bright out there. We had beta 18.2.0 in April 2018. And in July, we released the on-prem release 18.3.0 for 18C. At the same time, the first revision for the April one, and in October then, the first update, 18.4.0, official update, and then the first revision for the July one and the second revision for the April one. And at the same time, we released 19.1.0 internally and to some selected customers, and then 19.2 as the beta, and 19.3 in April 2019 was then the on-prem release of Oracle Database 19C, while we had 18.6, 18.5.1, and 18.4.2. And now when we drill this into the future and go forward for 2 years from now on, it looks like that. So the future projection here goes until end of 2022, and you see a huge variety of patches. So first of all, be aware that patching ends for 18C with the July or April bundle patches. I need to verify that. I think it could be either April or July. Most likely it will be April, because the release goes out of Premier support in end of June, so there shouldn't be any July fixes anymore. And then there's a hard stop. And still for 19, it goes on and on because it's a long-term support release. So that pattern will be kept until 2024. And as this looks a bit strange, let me first explain what you could do and what is different from the old concept. Because you can jump, of course, and you could jump with the old concept as well. So you could go from 19.3.0 to 19.9.0. And as the patch bundles are cumulative, you have all the ones included. And actually, sorry, this should be 19.7.0 and not 19.9.0. I just realized this. I did a find and replace on the slides. I changed this one here as well. So April 2020 is 19.7.0. And you can jump because 19.7.0 in April 2020 contains also the previous ones. Then you can go also to the release update revisions, 19.7.2, stay there, go back to the release updates, 19.11, and so on. So the message here is, you can skip, of course, you could that before, but you can also change tracks. So you can go from release updates to revisions and back to release updates. You can jump to the right. You can jump up and down, as you see in July 2022 with 19.16 and 19.14.2. What you shouldn't do, even though it's technically possible, you should never go to the left side, backwards. Because if you do that, you would remove security content you had already, and this is not a good idea. But now my recommendation for you is you stay with release updates. If we go into the slide from before and compare it to this one here, it's clearly that this is much easier. You have less choices. I can tell you that it's also much, much easier to request a one-off fix on top of a release update than requesting a one-off on top of a revision. So stay with the RUs, and I tell you now with 2 slides why I disrecommend RURs. And I call this the RUR trap. RURs were marketed as stability releases, stability patches. And it has one good aspect, because in an RUR, the goal is when we introduce a regression, something we break with a release update, we fix that in the next RUR. But the first, I would say, disadvantage here, it takes 3 months until that gets released. And second thing is, when you stay with RURs, you consume release updates secretly, but a release update 6 months old. So when we are looking at the lower picture here on the slide, and we move from 1832 to 1842 because somebody promised stability, that means with 1842, even though I change only from RUR to RUR, I consume secretly the 1840, the October RU, which is now 6 months old, and the January RUR as well. So when I map this now to number of fixes, which is my second example to make this more obvious, when we do like an artificial example, an RU has only 100 new fixes, 25 for security, 75 for other fixes. That means an RUR adds just the security fixes, as I explained before. So RUR1 adds 25 on top, RUR2 adds another 25 on top. That means from July to October, I jump from 100 to 200 to 300 to 400 and so on with RUs. While when I go on the RUR track, I jump from July to October to 125 and in January 150. But as we consume now the RUR secretly from October, the old one, the outdated one, I jump now from January to April from 150 to 250. And this is not the intention because you wanted to believe that, oh, just the 25 new ones get added, and this is not true. And this is why I'm completely against that idea. I started in Oracle support with 6 years RDBMS mission critical support, and there's nothing worse than when you have to tell a customer, oh, sorry, you hit an issue, and by the way, this was fixed already. But unfortunately, you stayed on old content, and if you would have taken the newer patch bundles, everything would be fine, and you would never hit that. I think this is bad, and this is why I strictly recommend you go with RUs. And I had made this experience also with customers on RURs where we needed one-offs, and it took an awful long time, much longer than getting a one-off on top of an RU. So enough with patches, or not enough with patches. The most important reason to upgrade and patch is clearly these days security. And as I assume a lot of you participating in today's web seminar are working for banks, insurances, really, this is something you need to take care on. And I give you one example here, why you need to take care on patches, on security patches especially. This is something I guess you all have heard about. Also, Larry Ellison, I think 3 years ago at Open World, really ranted about this case in the keynote. I guess Larry was affected as well, because the most famous Equifax breach, where the management decided that a patch where Apache released an alert for the Struts software shouldn't be applied, or not now, maybe later someday. And the alert was published in March, and in May, Equifax was hacked with exactly this Struts issue, and 143 million US customers were affected. Now you would say, hey, just another hack, who cares? There are so many these days. But honestly, this one was one of the most impacting ones, because Equifax is a financial transaction broker, and they had not only the credit card data, but a lot of personal data as well, including addresses, and that is the worst in the US, also the social security numbers. And with the social security number, an address, and your credit card, I can do a lot of damage. So because of all the damage and the lawsuits filed against Equifax, not only the board and the management had to leave the company, but also there were a lot of settlements. And this was an article in the New York Times a year ago, where Equifax settled for the largest ever data breach settlement. This is just to avoid other payments, $650 million US. And this is not the damage happened here, this is just a settlement. So this tells you how impacting postponing patching could be, especially if the vendor tells you there is an issue and you have to apply the patch. And if you now laugh at me and say, hey, Mike, my database is not facing the internet, I smile back at you and say, hello. We don't care if your database server is connected directly to the internet. I bet it's connected to your network, and your network is connected to the internet because you receive email and whatever. And 92% of malware, this is not a number I made up, 92% of malware gets delivered via email. How simple is that? So you need to patch. And basic facts, as I explained before, to apply the patch binaries, we need opatch. Always grab the newest opatch. When we patch with opatch, the instance running from that home or the instances need to be down. This is why in a rack environment, you can patch rolling with opatch auto, and then it goes in a rolling node by node fashion. So always at least one node is up and running. Data patch is used to apply the SQL changes to a database, and the database must be up. Now, the patching process. And I shortcut here a bit due to the time constraints, but I want to give you the most important things. If you need more, we have recorded seminars where alone this one, what I tell you right now about strategy and patching, takes 1.5 hours, but you go to the Upgrade blog to videos and you can watch that as well in more detail if you're interested. What I would like to tell you here is that we release patch bundles quarterly, and it's always the Tuesday closest to the middle of the month in January, April, July, and October. So the last one was already a month ago. And if we would be in a live seminar, I would ask you now for your fingers and tell me if you applied that already, just to get an idea. These days, the customers I work with, most customers patch at least twice a year. And this is what I strongly recommend, even though I would say, please check. And what with all the critical patch updates, what gets released is the risk matrix. And your first task is the morning after we released the patches, you go and you check the risk matrix, or you check my blog because I blog instantly about that as well, and apply the patches. In the risk matrix, you check for the component on the left side of the slide. So if you have no Java, no multimedia, and no Apache Tomcat, then only the fourth one applies for you, the core RDBMS issue. Then you check the base score. So base score, the high score is 10. That means if something is 8, that is already very critical. A lot of customers I work with tell me, oh, everything above 6.0 is critical for us, and we will apply that. And this is not a scoring Oracle has invented. This is a commonly CVSS risk score matrix, where you find always a link on top explaining how that works and what the impact is. On the right side in this column, supported versions affected, you need to check that. Let's say you have multimedia and you use multimedia, it's in your database, but you are already on 19C. Then you would ignore this one because it's only 12.102. But be aware, if 11.204 until 19C is mentioned here, that issue applies certainly to all database releases, also before 11.204 most likely. We just mention the supported versions here. We don't tell you, oh, the first one is happening in 11.203 and 11.202 as well, and 10.205 by the way too, because we don't even verify it with these releases, but you can silently assume it applies to them as well, where you don't get patches anymore, which is the reason why you need to upgrade. Now, OJVM, this is a very crucial piece, I would say. So it's actually a very fine software piece. When you put your Java code into the database and you compile it there, the speed of execution is way faster than having everything in an external Java application and integrate it during runtime. But the problem with OJVM is, if there's a security flaw, as OJVM is so powerful, it's really an issue. So you see, I went back until January 2015 into the risk matrices, and we had even 9.9. So this is close to the high score. I think Microsoft had a straight 10 recently in Windows somewhere. So be aware, when OJVM is there, you basically must patch. Average score is 7.7 over a period of more than 5 years now. What do you need to do then? You check if OJVM is in your database, and if you find in DBA registry Java VM component, this is OJVM, and then you have 3 choices. Your 3 choices are either patch it quarterly, and OJVM is a separate patch bundle, or disable it with the mitigation patch, or remove it from your database. So when you go and download the detailed slides, I explain on every slide what the actions are. Patch it quarterly is obvious, but you need to find out if somebody is using the OJVM. And we have a Moz node, which is on the detailed slide, telling you how to find out if you have applications using OJVM. If an application is using it, you have no other choice than to patch it quarterly. If you find out, oh, nobody's using it, then you can disable it with the mitigation patch. And the mitigation patch is nothing you need to install. It's just in your Oracle homes since 2017, July, I think, even in 11.204. And the mitigation patch needs just a script to be active. And this script gives you a call to disable the Java subsystem. And when the Java subsystem is disabled, nobody can do any security fraud to your database with OJVM because you disabled the Java subsystem with the mitigation patch, even though the software piece is on disk. Only problem with the mitigation patch, you have to enable Java when you patch and disable it afterwards. Again, and the same applies to upgrade. Or the most safest way, if you don't use it, remove it from the database. I documented this on the upgrade blog, and there are official Moz notes explaining the removal of OJVM, even from multi-tenant databases as well. Now you find all this and much more about patching on the upgrade blog. So what you find there is that patching all the environments in a quarterly cycle, I'll do that, and also JDK patch information. I try to release a lot of these things, not because I'm the product manager for patching. There is no such role in Oracle. It's just that patching and upgrades are so closely tied together, and I force my customers to patch on a regular basis, and this is why you find so many messages on the upgrade blog. Now download and install the patches. So check for the newest OPatch version. You always must apply the newest OPatch, otherwise you may have trouble sometimes. Download and unzip the patch bundle, check for conflicts, shut down the instance using the home, and apply the binary with OPatch or OPatch Auto, and afterwards run data patch. So OPatch, use the newest. The patch ID for OPatch stays constant, so it's always 688-0880. Very simple, remove the existing OPatch directory from your Oracle home, copy the patch zip file into your Oracle home, unzip it, and it will recreate that directory, the OPatch directory. Very simple, very straightforward, no rocket science, helps you avoiding a lot of issues. And then use this Moz node to find the patch. Actually, I think this is one, if not the most important Moz node by far, because the search, when you search for, let's say, the October release update for 19C, for, let's say, AIX, I bet in a Moz search you will never find that. You will find all sorts of whatever, but not this one. So what you should make is, you open this Moz node, and you see the yellow star on the left side of my slide. This normally in your case is gray. When you click on that star, it becomes yellow. And in the middle of the Moz screen of the dashboard, when you log on, you have a favorites drop-down list. And if you have a yellow star on a Moz node, it will be in your favorites. You can order them as well. And this way, you have always this node in access if you need it. What you do here is, you download Oracle Database Updates, version 12.2 or higher, then you choose your release, let's say 19C, and on the right side of the slide, there will a table appearing which gives you direct access to the patch download link. That's how simple as it is. This Morse node, I think, is one of the essential Morse nodes. And a few tips for patching success before we go into the upgrade. First of all, I didn't speak about that beforehand, but always use out-of-place patching, meaning you prepare a new home, and in this new home, you apply your patch bundle, and you just swing your database. So you stop it in the old home, you start it in a new home, you run data patch, that's it. Much easier, less risk, and your old home stays in place just in case you find something and you need to go back. Standardize your environments, use gold images. We will talk about that in a second in the upgrade area. Automate where possible and stay current on quarterly release updates. So please make sure you have the most current ones. You can speed up data patch if you run util rp before invoking data patch to clean up invalid objects. And where applicable, if you have a RUC, use rolling patching or standby first apply to reduce the downtime. So this was everything I wanted to tell you about patching at this stage here. Now let's go on to upgrade. And your key to a successful database upgrade is downloading the software, applying the newest RU, downloading the newest AutoUpgrade, and at the end, do some performance measurements. And we come to this part after the break. So first of all, if you never dealt with database upgrades, you grab the Quick Start Guide. This is a 3-page overview, or if you need to convince somebody or your managers, just Quick Start Guide. Very simple, straightforward, step-by-step how to upgrade. And then there are a few things to do before the upgrade. So first of all, we start with the OS certification. So good news is Oracle Linux 7 or Red Hat 7 or SUSE/12, whatever, supports 11.204 to 19C. So this is still my favorite choice because I can have everything which is supported right now. 19C is also supported on Linux 8, and at a late stage, we released also the certification for 12.102 on Linux 8, but with a long list of extra treatments. So be aware of that. And I can't tell you if any other release will get certified on Linux 8 as well. I really don't know. Just if you want to go to Linux 8, go to the upgrade blog and especially pay attention to the comments section. So scroll down once you read the articles because customers really gave a lot of tips and tricks I wasn't aware, and people exchange about their experiences, their findings. So on the blog, just include also reading the comments section below the posts. And you see it already. 26 posts, comments in the right one. And I think I took the screenshot like 4 months ago, something like that. Now, if you want to upgrade to 19C, you have to be on 11.204, 12.102, 12.201, or 18C. Upgrade means AutoUpgrade, DB upgrade, or for the brave ones here, it is called the DBUA. When you take any other techniques such as data pump, you don't care about these releases. You can even upgrade, migrate, I would say in this case, like a 10.204 database directly to 19C if you use other techniques. But for the upgrades, these restrictions apply. The installation has become differently in 18C already. Now you create a new directory. This will be your Oracle home. You download the image, which is a gold image. It's always the base image at the moment, so 1930. You unpack it in this directory, and then you run the installer, and you can pass on your root credentials. And the installer will now just configure the installation. So there's nothing like in the old days where now a ton of files have to be copied back and forth. This is not happening because everything is in place. The installer will just configure it correctly. If you have Apex, I'm a big fan of Apex, but please always upgrade Apex upfront. 19C supports Apex 18.2 or newer, and I recommend you always using the newest one, but be aware the upgrade does not upgrade Apex, because sometimes Apex upgrade takes longer than a regular database upgrade, and therefore we have removed this from the upgrade process. So Apex is in your hands, and it makes more sense because it's an application layer software, so you need to check back with the application teams as well. And this brings me straight to AutoUpgrade. And AutoUpgrade is the only recommended way to upgrade your databases. And this is not my personal recommendation. This is a recommendation from Oracle. So take this, please, as an official statement. You can see this also when you take the 19C upgrade guide now. You will see it talks about AutoUpgrade. We covered also the other techniques, but in the appendix, because that is like from the old dark ages. AutoUpgrade is what all customers use these days if they are interested in automating their upgrades and not have too much work. And when you use AutoUpgrade, big recommendation, grab the newest version from my Oracle support. You won't find a more agile development team in Oracle right now than ours. Every 6 to 8 weeks, we release a new version. Right now, customer, for instance, ran into an issue. We have already a newer version in the development cycle, and we can sometimes release these versions to cure misbehaviors. In this note at the end, you find always a change log, and in this change log, we document what we changed very transparently, which issues got fixed, or if there are any new features we support right now. And just in case one of the newer versions of AutoUpgrade would introduce a regression, because even we are not the bug-free programmers, the previous versions of AutoUpgrade are accessible in this node and the bottom of the node as well, in case if you need a previous one. You say, oh my God, I overwrote it. Where do I get the previous one from? Same node here. So we have your databases, 11.204 and newer. We download the tool from the SMOS node. It's 2 megabytes in size. It's not larger, it's a tiny little tool. The only task you do right now, you prepare a config file. I show you that config file in a minute. Then you push the button and then you upgrade. And not you upgrade, AutoUpgrade upgrades. Nobody likes black boxes. Nobody trusts such tools which claim that they do everything secretly. And therefore, first of all, you have a job console. And with the job console, we can monitor everything. But even more important, there are a lot of log files written in the background. I come to this in 2-3 minutes as well. So what does AutoUpgrade do? You prepare a config file. You pass it on to the job manager. So you call AutoUpgrade, the job manager invokes and parses that config file, translates it into upgrade jobs and gives them to the dispatcher. And the dispatcher sends now these jobs. First of all, for all your databases you want to upgrade, because AutoUpgrade can upgrade as many databases in parallel as you want and as your system can consume, it does space checks. By default, AutoUpgrade writes a guaranteed restore point, so we need to ensure that there's enough space in your flash recovery area, some other things, some requirements. Next step is AutoUpgrade runs the pre-checks, and there's no need to download the pre-upgrade char. AutoUpgrade has embedded its pre-upgrade char already. And the magic of AutoUpgrade is it does automatic fix-ups. So I would say 95 to 97% of all checks AutoUpgrade does, it fixes it automatically. Then it does the upgrade as all other tools in the background on the command line, parallel upgrade, cutctlpl. And then after upgrade, it refreshes your statistics. It does a time zone adjustment, unless you overwrote that. It updates etc ORATOP. In a rack environment, it updates also the SRV-CTL configuration, SP file updates, and such things. Now, what do you need? You need Java 8 or newer. This is the default in your Oracle home since 12.102. You can also use the Java from a different Oracle home on the same server. And in most cases, it works also with the OS installed, if you have a new OS with the OS installed Java. Then you need the upgrade package, jar file, 2 MB. It upgrades CDBs and non-CDBs. All operating systems are included here, which run Oracle Database Server, all editions. So SE2, EE, single instance and RUG databases. Upgrades from your source version must be 11.204 and upgrades to not only 19C, but also 12.201 and 18, both with the January 2019 release update as minimum requirements. What you don't need? No agents, no cloud control, even though the cloud control teams are working with us. So we hope that soon cloud control utilizes AutoUpgrade as well. Also the fleet patching and provisioning folks, or it was formerly known as RHP, Rapid Home Provisioning, with the soon coming 21C version of RHP, which you can use also to deploy 11.2 or 12 or 19 homes. It will utilize also AutoUpgrade. You don't need the DBOA anymore. And of course, there's no extra license required here. What is coming soon? Full DataGuard broker support. So at the moment, you need to disable the broker and copy your broker files, and you need to defer the log transport. AutoUpgrade is doing this soon for you as well. So you can upgrade standbys, but you need to do manual tasks at the moment. And what is coming soon as well is that you can unplug, plug, and upgrade. So you take a PDB and you prepare a new CDB and you decide, oh, I unplug you from 12.201 and I plug you into 19C and then upgrade you. This is currently a manual task and it will be AutoUpgrade covered as well soon. If you need to dig into AutoUpgrade, the documentation, we completely overhauled the documentation, but you can also go to the upgrade blog and just start with the AutoUpgrade step by step, where still not all blog posts got released. I like a bit of time writing new blog posts, but should be there sooner or later as well, and still it works quite fine. When you take AutoUpgrade, the first step is you create a sample config file. And now you edit this sample config file. So you say java -char AutoUpgrade char minus create sample file config, and then AutoUpgrade tells you where it wrote the sample config file to. So we edit this file, and I show you the file here. So we start off with the SID. The SID is important. So this the SID here is DB12. In the line below for the second database, you see the DB name mentioned. This is not necessary anymore. This is why in the first example, I removed the DB name here. We need source and target home. So source home is 12.201 here, target home is 19C. And you see this UPG1 and UPG2 here. This is a prefix, and you can name this whatever you want, but it tells us which database you're talking about and which database you want to upgrade. You can put as many databases as you want into this file. AutoUpgrade works strictly parallel, so there's no limits like in the DBOA times where DBOA could only upgrade one database at a time from one home. Forget about that. AutoUpgrade upgrades as many as you want. But AutoUpgrade, this was the standard. So with a few lines, you can upgrade your database. Actually, 4 lines are needed at the moment to upgrade, but you can add more. So for instance, you can advise AutoUpgrade to delete or add parameters during the upgrade, or to delete, or what I use very often, add after upgrade, because later on I will give you some parameter recommendations and I will add them after upgrade. And the only thing is this global after add init aura file is simply a text file which has parameter equals value, and you can stack as many parameters if you need to into that. And you can do this globally for all your databases. So if you exchange the prefix with global, that applies to all databases. Or if you use the prefix now, it applies only to my UPG2 database. You can do much more. You can also start or advise AutoUpgrade to start a shell script. On Unix, a shell, on Windows, batch command or PowerShell, and either before action or after action. And you can do this globally or for specific databases as well. And for the before action script, we added also a return code option. Because let's say you want to shut down all your application servers, but if the shutdown of the application server failed for whatever reason, you don't want to have the upgrade invoked. So you use the return code flag, and then we wait for the script to complete either successfully or we stop the attempts. Then by default, AutoUpgrade writes a guaranteed restore point. If you use restoration no, that means either you don't want a GRP or your database is in no archive log mode and you don't want to have a restore point. For a standard edition 2 database, there are no restore points possible because we can't flashback. And therefore, by default, the tool detects that it's an SE2 database and does not create a restore point, but tells you that you need to take care of that. And if the restore point should be deleted after a successful upgrade, then you use drop GRP after upgrade equals yes. Now, AutoUpgrade has 4 operation modes. We start with analyze, which you can run. It doesn't affect your database at all. It doesn't change your database. You can run this right after this webinar in all your databases if you need to, and check if they are ready to upgrade. Fix up fixes the things the analyze finds, and upgrade upgrades your database. You can do all these 3 things in one pass with -deploy. That does analyze, fix ups, and upgrade. And now I will recommend you best practices here. Best practices, you run the analyze first. So java -char AutoUpgrade char -config, then your config file, and -mode analyze. And then you check the output. And then you run deploy when the analyze gets a green light and tells you everything fine. It repeats the analyze. You don't care. It runs the fix-ups. It sets its GRP, and it upgrades your database and does all the post-upgrade steps as well. If you move to new hardware, even then you can use AutoUpgrade. This is one of the big issues also with DBOA. It requires old and new home on the same box. Here you run analyze on the source and fix ups on the source. Then you shut down your database and you copy it over. Well, AutoUpgrade doesn't do that for you. Or you build up a standby already. So the files are already there. You do exactly the same thing. And now you stop the source, you activate the standby, or you restore your backup. And then you run upgrade, -mode upgrade, and it upgrades your database and does the post-upgrade steps as well. The most important commands, and I'll show you a very, very short demo, lsj, list jobs, and status -job. This gives you more information, but you can also abort a job, resume it. That is also very important. AutoUpgrade is resumable, or you can restore, which means you go back to the guaranteed restore point. You can also go back manually because if you go into VDOLA restore point, you see the restore point AutoUpgrade has set. The log file structure is very important because for every database we keep a separate log file. And when you run the analyze in the middle of the slide, the analyze will create the pre-checks directory and there's an HTML report in it. And this HTML report gives you advice if you have to do anything. We are in the process of creating the exact same report also as a text file, not as a HTML file, because on some servers you may not have the ability to start a browser there. There's still a pre-upgrade log as a text file, but it's in a different order, and we are refreshing this right now, so expect here a change very, very soon. In the DB upgrade directory later on, when the deploy mode or the upgrade mode runs, you find all the standard upgrade logs, but also more log files for the tool itself. And what if something went wrong? Very simple. I like that functionality so much. You call AutoUpgrade with your config file and you say -zip. And this creates a zip file, and it tells you again where it writes the zip file to. It has the last 10 megabytes of the alert log included already. I typically still add the alert log and upload it to Moz. And I typically also upload an OPatch LS inventory. No guarantee that the support engineer looks over it, but it should be there and makes life easier. And we have, of course, because often the question is, and I get this question internally as well, has anybody ever used that tool? Or recently from a support person in Oracle, I heard, oh, it's so new. I say, wait a bit, it's not new. We released it to production in April 2019, and we had people testing it before, like this guy here on the slide, Daniel Overby Hansen. He was the lead developer of SimCorp in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And Daniel presented with us at Open World. And he said, after qualifying, because he was one of the most active beta testers of AutoUpgrade, he tested a lot also on Windows. After qualifying the new AutoUpgrade tool on a representative portion of our database landscape, we found that tool was doing a great job and is production ready. In our automation tool, they have their own automation. We have removed a lot of homegrown code and replaced it with AutoUpgrade functionality. Since August 2019, all upgrades at SimCorp have been executed using the AutoUpgrade tool. And this is not the only reference we have. Just a week ago, we had DUAC conference in Germany. And in, I would say, every presentation I attended, and I tend to attend also presentations doing upgrades or using rapid home provisioning, everybody praised AutoUpgrade for the ease, the simplicity, and also the automation capabilities. So it's really the way to go. We had just, I can't give you the name here because we are not allowed to reference publicly. We had one of the leading automotive companies of the world recently telling us that they upgraded more than 500 databases in production in 10 days with AutoUpgrade, where they did 40 upgrades in parallel at peak times. And what they did is they have a quarterly OS patching maintenance window in production, and they included the scripts to trigger AutoUpgrade in that patching window. So when the OS was patched, they triggered AutoUpgrade, and so the databases, more than 500 databases, were upgraded smoothly in production. So customers use that. This is the only recommended way to upgrade your databases, believe me. And I show you a quick demo here now. And in this demo, I will use not command line option. I will show you a trick which you find also on the blog, because nobody wants to sit here and retype LSJ, 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 especially if you upgrade more databases or more PDBs all the time. And what I will do here is I will start a Python simple HTTP server, which is installed on every Linux system by default. And I will just go to this web page and let Python monitor my database upgrade, because in a standard directory, there's a status HTML or state HTML it's called, and this gets updated by AutoUpgrade automatically all the time. So what my web server will do, it will just monitor that file and refresh automatically. So let's go in and let's see how that works. What I do here is I have a 12.201 database, and I will show you the config file I'm using here. So very briefly, database name, a log directory, SID. We don't even need the DB name anymore, and my source and my target homes. That's how simple as it is. And I can even remove some of the parameters. 4 lines are required right now. Now I did the analyze already. I invoke now just a deploy with the config file mode deploy. So I could now retype LSJ, but this is boring. I show you what I do instead. I go to my log directory, and in upgrade auto, there's this state HTML. So I do a Python simple HTTP server on port 8080. And now I monitor it with a browser on localhost, and you see upgrade 0, 21%. It gets refreshed automatically. I don't have to do anything here. Now imagine you do this like with 20 databases upgraded in parallel. It will display all the 20 databases in parallel here. Upgrade 67%, now 91. Now it goes into recompilation, tells you how many objects need compilation. And it's finished. The upgrade, post-upgrade, post-dictionary. We skip now the post-fixed objects, that is not part, and upgrade has been finished. So this was a super fast demo. And of course, I shortened that. The entire upgrade has taken here 25 minutes around. But this is what you have to do. Config file, kick it off, just start a web server, monitor the upgrade, and lean back, relax. So AutoUpgrade, a few things to take care on afterwards, and then I think it's time for a break. So give me a few minutes and then we do a break. Best practices and things to take care on afterwards. Compatible parameter. Upgrade never changes compatible unless we have to, but normally we don't have to. Change it ideally 7 to 10 days after the upgrade because you can flashback, you can downgrade. 7 to 10 days after the upgrade, you certainly won't flashback anymore, but you may be able to downgrade. If you change compatible, you can't downgrade. And use always 3 numbers and the default numbers. Never 4, never 5. This is not your ASM where you need 4 numbers for the ASM and RDBMS compatibility in ASM. 3 are correct. Default values, never change it for RUs. Then in 19C, we remove multimedia, and we don't really remove multimedia, we remove the API. The locator stays, and also the component stays valid. This is very misleading, and I don't expect any change before a future release of Oracle database. Not even the next release has this correctly. So it's still a strange hybrid state, I would say. But if you don't use multimedia, remove it before upgrade. Streams get removed. So last release has Oracle Streams is 18C with 19. The API gets completely ripped out of the database during upgrade. So there's no way to have streams with 19C. DBMS chop is still supported, but it will not exist in the database. You can use it. You can use all the API calls, but underneath the covers, when you use DBMS chop, it will create a twin job in the scheduler and use the scheduler to do everything. So please check a bit on my blog, on Connor McDonald's blog. We blog about DBMS chop quite a bit. There are not many changes you have to take into consideration, but there may be a few tiny little ones. And one recommendation, if your database is sort of important to you, then before the upgrade, I should include this into the before upgrade section. Actually, it makes more sense there. Run the H check. Only on the important one, but the H check checks for known dictionary corruptions, for known issues in your database. And typically during upgrade, we will touch everything in the dictionary. And if there's like a sleeping dictionary corruption, we will find it during upgrade usually. So H check may detect such issues before upgrade. So run H check before you upgrade your database. And then it's time for a break. What I will do now is I will start reading the questions you may have put into the Q&A. And while I do that, I will start also a timer, and we will time for 5 minutes. We do a 5-minute break. So those of you who are not interested or need to do something else, please feel free. And I will just bring up here the questions and see what's in the chat. So for Windows, the CPUs have come often a month later. Why? This is a good question. I know that it's very, very disturbing, and it's even sometimes more than a month. Often, I can tell you from reality, for instance, the July one got delayed so massively because in the regression testing, they found an issue with the newest package JDK for the Windows version, and there had to be really fixes done. Why it has happened now in October again, I really can't tell you. It's out there since November 20, I think, the October one, but I don't know the details. Sometimes it's really bound to regression testing, and on Windows, a few things are differently. Then there's a politics question. How do you address that Oracle says go to 19.9? The application editor says we certify our up with 11.204. I honestly would recommend you then taking a new application because 11.204 got released 10 years ago, so your application provider has obviously not invested into certifying a new release. We take into account that we did do a lot of disturbance thing with the 12.2 18.19 thing. So we understand if an application provider certified for 12.201, but if something is still certifying only 11.204, there's something wrong. We have a team in Oracle which takes care on such application providers. So you can team up with Oracle, and in development, we have such a team going in touch then with the application provider, trying to help them to certify the newest release. The PDF file will be attached, not here right now, unfortunately. I will make it available after the webinar for download. Sorry for that. It wasn't ready beforehand. I just received a message while I was presenting. The DBOA is still supported, yes, but I would never use it. Too many issues, too many constraints, and for me, one of the most important things, why not? The DBOA is definitely not resumable. And this is a big issue for me, and I can't upgrade databases in parallel. Often with the DBOA, we saw fixes appearing a year later after we detected them. Now our team owns the DBOA as well, and we will revamp it, but DBOA is still supported. So if you want to use it, feel free. I just recommend you using AutoUpgrade, makes your life much easier. Will you talk about new features in 19C? A little bit on the side. More some changes, but I can tell you in January 14, and it will be on the blog as soon as we have the landing page. We will do a webinar, 2-hour webinar, cool features not only for DBAs, where we only go into features for DBAs, typically features which are not on the marketing slides, and typically, or most of the features we cover are not extra license features, but features which are there already, just ready to be used. So not today, not enough time, but January 14, we do a 2-hour session on that. Go to the Upgrade blog. I will announce that, or follow me on Twitter, then you'll see the announcement as well. Does Upgrade take care on endian format? No, it doesn't. So when you do an endianness change, let's say from AIX, which is a big endian, to Linux, which is a little endian, then you do other techniques, because that is not an upgrade anymore. You do either data pump, if your database is not too big, or transportable table spaces, or full transportable export import. But I will cover a little bit of that in the multi-tenant section. The recording, I think my colleagues are recording that, and they will share the recording afterwards, and Mathieu already commented that. Okay, these were the questions so far. So please, if you have more questions, just put them in the Q&A and I will try to answer them afterwards. Let me go forward for the next 45 minutes, and that should fit well in time, I guess, and ensure performance stability. And I wait a little bit when I advance the slides, so you have a chance that you see the slide. I know there's a little bit of a performance lag. Sorry for that. We try our best. So a prescription to ensure performance stability. I would say the biggest fear people have when we change database environments is performance issues. And I don't lie when I tell you almost every day I get an email, a Twitter message, a comment on the blog, a colleague pinging me on Slack or calling me directly and saying, Mike, my customer upgraded and they now have a performance problem. So first of all, a recommendation, remove outdated parameters. And I just had this discussion this morning with our people taking care on our DBCS database as a service OCI environments. I always recommend removing outdated parameters events unless the application provider dictates that you have to have them. So for instance, EBS, Oracle E-Business Suite, has this interoperability nodes and tells you, you have to set these parameters. So for instance, I just see here for Siebel in the screenshot, they recommend memory target. I would never recommend memory target. So memory target is a bad parameter. It doesn't allow you to use huge pages. It has a different way how we allocate the SGA. But if Siebel dictates that, then it's a rule. No way out here. But try to remove the old things, really do so. Also something which I think is quite often overlooked. By default, the database collects and keeps object statistics. So for your AMP and your debt table, when we created stats a month, I have never seen any customer going back and restoring statistics a month old. I've seen people restoring statistics a week, 8 days old. So I always set this to 10. This saves, you can measure this saves space in the SysAux table space. You can monitor it with occupant name equals sm dash or slash obstat individual SysAux occupants. And then, yeah, when I receive these emails, and typically they start with, help me, I have an upgrade problem, I'm drowning, or my customer, IHAC, IHAC, I have a customer. And in 95% of all cases, these upgrade problems in reality are performance issues after upgrade and definitely not a database upgrade topic. I mean, there are database upgrade topics. Sometimes this happens, but in most cases it's not. And there's only exact one way to mitigate that risk. You need to test. It sounds odd and simple, but it's reality. No other way available for that. And typical testing mistakes I see in real world. So first of all, only 10% of the real data used. I like that a lot. Oh, Mike, sorry, we have a 100 terabyte warehouse, but on our test system, we can only have 8 terabyte of it. This is asking for optimizer trouble. Even more asking for optimizer trouble is when you say, oh, we just get the structure and we fill it with artificial data sets. Because for security reasons, we are not allowed to have the real data. Then use other techniques or use masking. There are enough techniques available, even in the Oracle stack, to do that. But never do this if possible. Or don't do your tests on a laptop, or no testing tools used at all. That is actually, I would say, the most common problem I see. I would guess in 80 to 90% of all cases, I see this happening. 6 months old data, also a thing. No statistics refreshed, and I refer to not what Upgrade does. Upgrade refreshes the dictionary statistics, but you need or you should also refresh your object statistics. And the worst thing is, if you say, oh, testing, that's just a waste of time. Oracle misbehaves anyways, so let's go live and fix things after go live. I mean, you can do this. I call this the cowboy way. Go for it, but be prepared that the first days after upgrade will be very stressful days for you. I guarantee that. Then another topic up front, which I think can't be explained often enough. Compatible and optimizer are two different shoeboxes here. They have nothing to do with each other. They're completely independent from each other. Compatible, when you set it to the default of the release. So when you go to 19C and you know that you don't go back anymore, set it to 1900 and keep it for the entire lifespan of your 19C release. And for all your 19 databases, don't mix 19 and 1910 or don't add a fourth number to it. When you want to change the optimizer behavior, then you have the possibility to use optimizer features enable. And this changes only the optimizer parameterization. So if I go to 19C and I change optimizer features enable and set it to 11204, that means I run in a 19C database with 19C optimizer code, but with the optimizer parameters as they were in Oracle 11204. I recommend to avoid that if possible, because you are still using newer optimizer code. And in some cases in the code, there's really a distinction, but in other cases, a central piece of the code has changed. And there we can't use the old 11.204 behavior anymore because it's simply not in the code. So this is not a Swiss Army knife. You will turn off a lot of great features if you do that. And I get really angry if I see this in service requests when a support engineer recommends a customer who had an issue, like I have a wrong result issue, I just set optimizer features enable 12.102, then all is good. Because in this case, you turn or you fix one issue, but you turn off 75 great features actually, which is not good. Always force the support people to tell you the exact underscore to turn off a feature. You should never be satisfied when a support engineer tells you optimizer features enable, just downset it and all is good. This is not good. The workflow, because what we see as testing is not done yet, or no time, no budget for testing. So I will give you an example how we think proper testing should happen and try to adopt as much from that. So first step is we collect execution plans before upgrade. This is the most simple task, and this is license-free in Enterprise Edition for ages now. What you do is you grab, even though if you don't have a diagnostic pack license right now, you grab the statements from AWR and you put them into a SQL tuning set. This suitcase symbol on my slide here, SQL tuning set STS, has now all your statements from AWR, including the execution statistics and the execution plan. If you have an OLTP system, use capturing from cursor cache in addition. This is why I put the microphone symbol on the slide next to the SQL icon. So we can like put a microphone into the cursor cache and record statements, execution statistics, and plans into a SQL tuning set as well. I do this for OLTP because in OLTP environments, not all statements typically go into the AWR. So this is for our protection and to have the right information from source. Now an easy treat is AWR diff reports. If you can put some comparable load on your upgraded system or your migrated system. So this is not only for upgrades, it's also for migrations. An AWR diff report makes only real sense if you know now I have a snapshot interval on production, let's say Monday 8 to 12, and I can trigger some comparable workload on my upgraded or migrated database to get the similar load and then also the same snapshot interval for 4 hours. And then an AWR diff report, which you either do in Enterprise Manager or you call it with AWR DD rpt.sql. You see left to right. Left side is first, right side is second. So this is the first run, the initial interval. And now here I check for wait events in my screenshot. And I want to see the wait events after upgrade and if there's a difference. And yeah, I see already a difference. There are like 22 million waits for a DB file sequential read, which had there just 6 million waits before. So I need to investigate why this has come up and why this is now the top event. So this is simple to do. It helps you finding, I would say, 70 to 80% of the worst performance issues, but it doesn't work very well on a statement level here. And for the statement level evaluation, if I have a license for real application testing, if not, I will tell you a word about that. I like that feature so much because SQL Performance Analyzer is so simple to use and I can reiterate once I fix stuff. So the left part on the slide, capture the SQLs into a SQL tuning set. You remember, I've recommended this as the first stage. Now I upgraded or migrated my database and I load that SQL tuning set, which has now my statements, my execution statistics, and my plans from before upgrade. And in a new database, we simulate now the execution, like we go into a sandbox mode and simulate these statements. And the cool thing is, I can repeat that simulation over and over again, So I change init aura parameters, for instance. We did this a while ago for a customer who wanted to know if first rows 10 or first rows 100 or all rows is the best optimizer goal. And you repeat that test over and over again. As a result, you get a regressed report like this one here. So in a regressed report, we see the regress statements. You see 2 SQL IDs. And I click on the second SQL ID. And on the second SQL ID, when I click there, I get 6 different execution statistics for elapsed time, parse time, buffer gets, and so on, with an arrow up and down or equal to tell me it's worse or better than before. And when you move your eyes now to the right on the slide, you see SQL trial 1 and SQL trial 2. So SQL trial 1, this is what we collected on the production. SQL trial 2 is now the simulation. And when I scroll lower in that report, I see the plan before and after. So it gives me the plan before and it gives me the plan from a simulation. To make the simulation really realistic, it simulates each statement 10 times and samples then the average. So it's not just a single thing and, oh my God, the buffer cache was not warmed up, we get a different result. No worries with that. Now, when you go with your eyes to the right upper corner, then you see the last column, which is a bit overlaid, new plan, and it says yes for the first 2 statements. So this means my statement has gotten a new plan and it led to worse performance. How do I fix that? And this is where SQL Plan Management comes in. This is a free Enterprise Edition feature in every database since 11.107. So what do we do here? We have done everything on the left side. You remember? We collected everything. Now we have the plans. Now I know from my SQL Performance Analyzer run that a few plans change to the bad or to the worse. So how do I fix that? Before I go live, I just use this DBMS SPM load plans from SQL set call and nail down these plans into the plan baseline. So when the same statement is coming again, and the statement gets always parsed and then hashed, and when it comes with that SQL ID, the database recognizes, hey, for that statement, we have an approved plan here. I use that one. If the database still believes I have a better plan, it will put it in a plan history for a later verification, but it will use your plan. So the ideal scenario is that we found, let's say, 20, 30 plans which misbehave. We nailed them down before going live, and then we go live and we don't see these regressions anymore happening. If you say, oh, Mike, but I don't have a license for real application testing, I can tell you the same technique works, but with a little bit more stress for you, because what you would do now is you would go live and you would monitor your system carefully. And if you find such plans, Enterprise Manager, by the way, is a big helper here, because Enterprise Manager allows you also, if it's still in AWR, it shows you the alternative plans. So you see basically a new plan, and then Enterprise Manager tells you, hey, wait a bit, there was a different plan before, and then you can also nail it down. So SQL Plan Management is very well handled in Enterprise Manager as well. So again, this is in every Enterprise Edition license since 11.107. No extra license required here. If the plan is the same as before, but the statement is still bad, this can happen sometimes, like it has double buffer gets now or generates 6 times as much redo. We had such cases in the past. Then the next attempt is the SQL Tuning Advisor. And this requires now the tuning pack. But the idea is the SQL Tuning Advisor gets now our leftover statements, those we couldn't cure with SQL Plan Management, and especially those who don't use bind variables. Because SQL Plan Management works only very well with bind variables. And we give them now to the SQL Tuning Advisor. And the SQL Tuning Advisor tries to find a profile. So it goes again with the statement in the sandbox mode and simulates now the execution. But in this case, it applies treatments like secret optimizer hints to it. And when it finds such hints, then it nails them into a profile. So what the profile does is the statement comes to the database, gets parsed, gets hashed, and with this hash, the database recognizes, oh, for this hash, for the SQL ID, there's a SQL profile available. So I treat the optimizer with that. I tell the optimizer, hey, turn left first, and then do what you want to do, and then all will be good. The cool thing with the profiles is you can apply them with force_match true. That means you turn on cursor sharing to force on a statement level only. So you don't harm your bind statements, because when you set cursor sharing force in the init aura in the SP file, you harm all your binds. But in this case, we do it only on a per statement level, and this doesn't change the application code. So you even don't have to negotiate now with the application team if this is good or bad. You can test them, you can create them on a test system, you can transport them within a staging table without any risk. And it finds also some other things, like here in the screenshot, you see that it found out that statistics on the table and the index in the dictionary are stale. So even such things get revealed. And also, of course, with the code, how to cure that. And the final thing, if you have the bandwidth, if you have a license for real application testing, would be database replay. And this means now when I did all these treatments to my database, I need now to prove to the application that no application changes are necessary. And I want to see the overall performance. Then I capture now a workload on production and I replay that. The replay, be aware, is destructive. That means while the SQL performance analyzer simulates, the replay does things. So if you do an update on the emp table, it does an update on the emp table. So you need a proper test system. And this is why I be honest with you. This is a great feature, but it works very simple on PowerPoint. In reality, there's a lot more work to do. That starts with proper capturing. That starts also with a proper replay system, which ideally starts at exactly the same SCN as your capture started, to make sure that everything can be replayed successfully. Also take into account that remote activities like reading data from a database link or via a gateway can't be covered here. So it's not 100% thing, but what helped me a lot in customer projects is at the end, we get an error divergence report. And if that report shows no divergence, that means all our statements we captured go through. And what a capture does, it doesn't record the result set, but when we record a select star from emp, we record that the result was 14 rows. And when you replay, we replay the select star from emp again. So if it passes, that is good. But we record also and compare that we get 14 rows again. And if that's all good, there's no divergence, all is good. And then you can go back to the application team and tell them, hey, look, there's no change required here. Now, all this is based partially on licenses, I told you, and I'll be always honest here. In March, we will do another seminar. It's still far away, but March, how you can use these things when you're not licensed for, because you can use a lot on-prem and you can test and use a lot of these features at no extra license in the cloud. So we will do an entire seminar showing how you can use the cloud for these performance testings and for proper performance testing. And regardless if you want to migrate into it or if you just use it as a test environment. So this will be in March, and I will announce this on the blog as well. We'll actually do 3 of these seminars in January, February, and March next year. And we record them as well. So if you missed them, they will be available on the blog afterwards too. So a few hidden gems, fix them when you upgrade. And the first thing is, in 19C, SQL plan management became automatic. In 19.4 for 19.3 for everybody, in 19.4 only on Exadata. I'm still very skeptical. I deal a lot with Exadata customers, and I tend to turn this back to the 12.2 or 12.1 settings, depending on where you came from, On the upgrade block, you find the exact statements how to turn this back. Because I fear a bit that plans can be accepted automatically, and the automatic evolve job will just bring in plans with an unlimited plan limit. I have my doubts here. Statistics Advisor. The Statistics Advisor, it's there since 12.2.1, and basically it's a good thing, but we have also customers who reported very high growth of entries, and it's active on a standard edition as well, by the way. So you may find more information on the blog, and in case you want to turn it off, because there's unfortunately no switch to turn it off, you turn it off by setting the MON and the stats intervals for the auto this is the maximum value you can set here, and it's, I think, 100 years, something like that, so it won't hit you anymore. And don't ask me why this group doesn't apply some switches to turn things properly off. Same thing here with 19.7. I discovered by accident in my hands-on lab environment that there appeared an automatic SQL tuning set I have not created by myself. So apparently there was an auto STS capture task, and it was true by default. So with 19.8 on all Unix ports and with 19.9 on Windows, this is turned off by default. So if you need to turn it off, it's on the slide here. I'm not a fan of such automatic things going on in the background, even though it's not used. There's still resources used, and there's also space used in your sysocs table space. So I don't see a need for such things to be enabled by default, and especially enabled secretly. Then one big recommendation. This parameter must be in all your databases from 12.2.1 on. And we are still in negotiations with the multi-tenant team. So if you want to do me a big favor, if you don't have the parameter and you run into performance issues, open SRs and make them treated with bugs. This Moss note here on the slide shows very, very well-known performance issues, like high version counts for SQL statements, post-upgrade, to typical cursor pin X, wait for whatever, in the hang analysis in the AWR reports. The multi-tenant team has turned this parameter to its maximum of 8,192 to do their 4,000 PDB projects. Unfortunately, you won't have 4,000 PDBs, for sure not, I hope. I know one customer who has really 2,000 PDBs, but this is very rare, very extreme. In one CDB, by the way. I know customers who have 2,000 and more PDBs, but in many CDBs. With 12.102 set this parameter everywhere, we have also found wrong result issues already with this high setting. So drastic performance issues happen. This has to be in all your 12.102, 18, and 19 databases, and at least in the next database release as well. Always have this underscore to 1024. And we filed a bug to get the default changed, and we are still in negotiations. I recommend you also to turn off deferred segment creation. This is a default for a long time. And the idea is you create an object, a table or an index, no rows inserted, no space wasted. But first of all, you get a bad performance penalty when you insert the first row. And second, there were so many dictionary corruption issues with that in the past. And I come across that all over the place in upgrades, especially from 12.1 to newer releases. I set it definitely off, unless my application really demands that. And then, yeah, the most unfunny feature in the past, I would say, was the optimizer adaptive feature introduction 12.102 or 12.102, yes, it was. So optimizer adaptive features were true by default. In 12.2 on, we split this into two parameters. We have optimizer adaptive plans, and the default is true. That allows the optimizer to change after parsing between hash join and nested loop and do some parallel treatments. Optimizer adaptive statistics like SQL plan directives and a lot of other things are false by default, which is good. I would leave that on false. I usually allow optimize adaptive plans true because that are some good things. Only if you say, no, I have doubts or I don't want to see an execution plan changing after parsing, then you may set this to false as well. And then we found something which is also very strange. Even if you have optimized adaptive statistics false, which is the default, the database collects SQL plan directives in the background. And it does that for no obvious reason. In order to fully disable SQL plan directives, you need to set _SQL plan directive management control 0. Otherwise, it's set to 67, and this means it collects plan directives, it writes them to your sysorgs, it again wastes space in sysorgs, and I don't see any need for that, especially since that feature requires a lot of know-how to use it properly, and we have seen too many issues with that feature. So please, second underscore, you remember cursor, obsolete threshold 1024, SQL plan directive management control 0 in all your databases. Now, relax, stay calm, and if you have still an issue, please don't throw something against the wall, don't smash your keyboard, don't yell at me, open a service request with Oracle support. If the service request didn't get treatments as quickly as you expect, raise the severity to 1. Typically non-24/7, because if you do 24/7 severity 1, then the SR starts traveling around the world. And personally, I haven't had that good experiences with SRs, especially over the weekend traveling around the world. A lot of updates like, hello, I'm and I treat you now very well and I will solve your SR. And this was the last update for the next hours until the SR sailed on to the next time zones. So 24/7, no, but SEF1 is fair enough if needed. If you need more attention, update ESR quickly in a few minutes, then it pops up higher in the queue because at some point the updates trigger an alert. And call the hub. This is your telephone number if you need an escalation. If you say, now I want attention, this is taking too long, call the hub. And the hub is your local support telephone number. They still exist. And they will inform the SR owner and if necessary also the manager. Ask also for a management callback if required, but don't be frustrated, okay? Escalate if necessary to get proper attention. And this brings me to migration to multi-tenant. So we have 15 minutes left and I would like to give you a brief overview on that topic here. And at first, the migration to multi-tenant can be done with AutoUpgrade, believe it or not. But before we go into this sentence here was or is in the upgrade guide for a long time, that we deprecate the non-CDP architecture and we may take away the non-CDP architecture in a release after 12.2. After 12.2 means after 19c. Everything stays as is with Oracle 19c. You are not forced to migrate to multi-tenant. But I recommend you at least identifying a few databases to consolidate with multi-tenant. Because with 19c and only from 19c onwards, not with 18, not with 12.2, you can have free user-created PDBs without the need for a multi-tenant license, and you can have this even in standard edition. So Oracle is not always evil. We do some good things sometimes as well. It was a tough fight, I can tell you, to get this through, but we wanted that because we want to give you the opportunity to benefit from the multi-tenant architecture and see that a lot of good things are in there. And single tenant at the beginning didn't make real sense for me. You have just overhead and not much gain, but free user created PDBs make a lot of sense. And the PDB dollar seed does not count here. So it's your user created PDBs. Just make one thing, set max PDBs equals free in your init or RSP file. And for all your databases, if you have no multi-tenant license. After 19C, there will be only the CDB architecture, and you see this already in the 20C preview documentation, where it says starting with 20C, Oracle databases only supported using the multi-tenant architecture. This is why you should start with 19C now, then you have your experiences, and for your next bigger upgrade, it makes life much easier if you're consolidated already. And you have adjusted all your processes by then. Now the migration to multi-tenant with AutoUpgrade is a one command orchestration. That means you have the config file, you advise AutoUpgrade to upgrade your database, and you prepared that CDB in the middle of my slide here. And then AutoUpgrade will plug in your non-CDB, and in step 3 will do the conversion to multi-tenant. All that with one command. And for that reason, we added 3 parameters to AutoUpgrade. The first one, if you want AutoUpgrade to plug in, is mandatory, because with this one, with target CDB, you tell AutoUpgrade what the SID of your CDB is you created to plug in your database. The next one is optional. If you want to rename your future PDB, because it was called ORCL and you always hated ORCL, and you wanted to call it now PDB1, then use this. You can rename it afterwards still if you need to. And the most important one, I think, is the PDB copy option, because by default we use no copy. I don't like that much, because this means if you want to restore now, as there's no exit button from multi-tenant, you have to basically go back and restore your backup into the old environment. And so I like the idea more for the AutoUpgrade part. We have a fallback going back to the guaranteed restore point or downgrading, and then you use the copy option and you will copy your database and plug it in. And this way you keep your fallback. Now, a secret. You can use AutoUpgrade if you upgraded already to 19C. So you upgraded, you have a CDB, now you call AutoUpgrade without even doing an upgrade. You say source and target home. Here you see it's the same home, your DB ID, and important is you say target CDB name. So target underscore CDB, and you give your SID where you want to plug in. You don't even need the PDB name. So only with this parameter addition and source and target home being the same and the database is upgraded already, AutoUpgrade will plug in and do all the steps now for your database. For the migration to multi-tenant, there are a few things to take care on. First of all, you can have 19C non-CDBs left side of the slide. No changes to previous releases. As I explained, free tenants are allowed in 19C without multi-tenant license. Even in SE, the PDB $seat, the gray one, does not count. Recommendation, set max PDBs equals free then. Or right side of the slide, multi-tenant license required up to 252, or on engineered systems or in the cloud up to 4096 PDBs. Now, the idea of multi-tenant is that we share resources much better. So when you do a PS-EF pipe grep and then your SID, you see only the set of background processes for the CDB root for the red brick here. You don't see anything on the OS layer about your PDBs. They run as containers inside the CDB root. They share the background processes, the memory segment, of course, the SP file, the redo control, flashback logs. Your application needs to connect via the service name to it. There's also a workaround with an environment variable, but this has some implications. You will see it on a blog or in the full slide deck when you download it. When you create now this CDB where AutoUpgrade will plug in your PDB, you can create the CDB with less options. Just make sure you include the options your PDB has. And you have the choice only if you go in DBCA to advanced configuration and custom database. Only then you have this choice. And be aware here. Here I made some clicks also select component. That means all these components will be in my CDB $root. But as you see, include in PDBs, it's empty. That means none of these components will be in the PDB seed, and all my future PDBs will have none of these components. I can install them if I need to. I can also plug in from outside with text and multimedia because the root has it. That's all okay. Just be aware of that. Because it doesn't say include in PDB seed and all PDBs. So be aware. One thing I did a mistake here on purpose. I included Apex in the CDB $root. Apex should never be in the root. Apex should always be in the PDBs, because if you have it in the root, the PDB will only have like a partial Apex. And when you unplug and plug, you must make sure that the receiving CDB has the same Apex version installed in the CDB $root. Otherwise, you can't plug in. So this is troublesome. Apex only in PDB, never in CDB $root. And if you need to remove components, on the upgrade blog, there's a longer blog post series how to remove components from 11.2 to 12.102. When you create a new PDB, you provision it. Very simple, create PDB. You need an admin user, and you can specify the file name convert from the PDB $seed to your new PDB. It will provision within seconds. That goes very fast. The admin user can be deleted afterwards. And just a tip here, you don't see the entire path. I just match the file patterns. And if the root of the path is identical, I can do this easily and just shorten my command here. If I'm in ASM, I don't have to care with OMF, then I have some other challenges. Also, if I want to clone locally, so I create a PDB from PDB within the same environment. On the right side of the slide, when I would like to do a remote cloning, I need a database link going from the black one into the red one, and then I clone over the database link. And this can be done in parallel, and you can monitor this in VDollar session long ops. By default, we use your CPU count as the parallel degree. Then for the upgrade, AutoUpgrade does that already. We start the database in read-only mode. Then we create the XML manifest file with dbms pdb describe. We shut down our source database, and then I connect to my red CDB and say create pluggable database. And here I use no copy. As I explained before, this will be the default. And after it's plugged in, I need to run this sanity script non-CDB to pdb.sql. This sanity script is used only once in the life of a database when your database was a non-CDB and will become now a PDB. It is luckily now rerunnable with 12.2, but it's irreversible. That means you can't unplug and make your database now a non-CDB again. You have to do like data pump or transportable table spaces if you intend to leave the fine universe of multi-tenant. The runtime depends a lot, and it depends on the number of objects in your dictionary. So be aware that it takes longer for an EBS database than it does for your typical ORCL database, your toy databases you play with. You can also use full transportable export import, and this would be also my recommendation if you want to include also a platform migration and you would like to go to multi-tenant. Because then you provision a new PDB and you create a database link going into your source. Then you set your table spaces read-only in the source. You copy the data files, and then you run impdp on the network link where you say full yes and transportable always. And this rebuilds now everything and does the entire transportable table space part for you. I have only added version 12 in case my source database is an 11 database, because then I need to tell the database here, hey, please use a 12c feature. We secretly introduced that with 11.203 as well already. So your source can be as old as an 11.203 database for this technique. And for the upgrade, we have two approaches, everything at once or unplug, plug, upgrade. Whereas with everything at once, you start your CDB environment in a new environment, or you let AutoUpgrade do that. AutoUpgrade does this for you. Then we upgrade the root container with a maximum of 8 parallel workers. And then we upgrade the PDBs in parallel, 2 workers per PDB. And the parallel degree depends on the number of available CPU cores. Whereas on the right side of the slide, unplug, plug, upgrade, we upgrade only the PDB you unplugged and plugged. And in this case, you have more control. You are not bound to only one PDB for that technique. You can do this with 3 or 5 as well, but you have more control. The downside of the technique on the right side is, you see my CDB here is black. This is a second CDB. So I need to bring up that second CDB. I need to create it at first, and it allocates memory. So if I do this gradually now, step by step, that means I have the 2 CDBs running on my box. AutoUpgrade does the left thing at the moment. AutoUpgrade will support the right technique soon. So you pass on a list of PDBs and the target CDBs, and then AutoUpgrade does that for you as well. Now in multi-tenant, one new thing which you may have recognized already, you have now CDB views. And in the CDB views, they have one thing in common. They have a column called ConID. And ConID 1 means, you see it only populated if you have multi-tenant. 1 means this object belongs to the root container. 2 means it belongs to the seed. And be aware, this parameter underscore exclude seed CDB view false is the next underscore I set in all my databases because I want to see objects belonging to the seed. Again, I opened a bug for that years ago, discussing with the multi-tenant team why they hide the seed objects. They say, yeah, it's read-only, and I say, yeah, still, but if I patch, the seed will be patched as well, and I want to see if the patch had been applied successfully also in the seed. So I set this generally to false. And then the ConID is free to whatever for the PDBs. You can mix character sets. This is especially very important here in Europe. You have so many different character sets, MS-Win 1252, P90, P15, P9, P1, whatever, W8, DEC I had recently with a customer. You can mix, just make sure you're 19C. We had issues with mixed character sets with 12.201 with local undo. Make sure it's 19C. And the CDB $root must always be AL32 UTF-8. Keep in mind that your future PDBs will be all provisioned then with AL32 UTF-8. But when you plug in a non-CDB, you can plug in with any character set you want to. And then finally, let me spend 5 minutes on migration and fallback to multi-tenant. And then we will be done, and I will go into the questions in the Q&A. So migration strategies. First of all, there are 2 approaches. We upgrade to the matching version of the CDB. They plug in, as I showed you, run the sanity script. AutoUpgrade does this for you. Or we migrate directly into the PDB, which you will do ideally also for for different operating system platforms. Then you use data pump, transportable table spaces, full transportable export import. You can use these techniques, of course, for all databases, whereas upgrade works only on the same OS platform. Every approach requires unpredictable downtime. I don't want to scare you, but I want to be honest. You can reduce this downtime with Golden Gate on top. And for me, a bit of a hit was when I realized that our proven upgrade fallback strategies, flashback, downgrade, don't work for the migration to multi-tenant. So your fallback is export import with data pump, or you can use Golden Gate on top to decrease the downtime. And there are a few pitfalls. So on the block, I summarized a lot of these pitfalls. It's a longer read, be prepared. So we will read back and forth a little bit, but it's typically the components, but also other things require some attention. What you should do before you plug in, when you created this XML manifest file, I showed you before with dbms pdb describe, you go now to your future CDB and you run this compatibility check with this XML manifest file. And typically it tells you, no, it's not compatible. And no fear and no panic. Your next step is, in your future CDB, you check PDB plugin violations, the view with the 3 underscores. And in this view, you find the issue described. If something is an error, like on my slide here, which means there's a component, an option in the PDB, which is not present in the root container, so I need either to remove it from the PDB or install it in the CDB $root as well, before I can unplug. This tells me now what I have to fix. Unfortunately, this view doesn't get purged automatically. Only resolved entries can be purged. And everything which was a warning, and there are a lot of useless warnings, stays in there forever, which is quite odd. So you can migrate with any technique. And migration means you provision a new PDB and then you use data pump, transportable table spaces, full transportable export import. So very simple and straightforward approaches. I provision a new PDB, the green one, then I do an XDP, I move my dump file, I run an intdp. Everybody can do that. Or I create a database link, going from the green one to the red one, and run now the impdp and just pull it over the network link. Works also. And when you fall back, data pump is your friend, because you export, and when you export from the green one on the right side of the slide, you need to set version equals your receiving version. So if I want to import into 11.204, I need to set version equals 11.204. Then I move the dump file. This does not work over the database link, unfortunately. Here I need to go with the dump file and then import into my source. For the upgrade, I showed you already AutoUpgrade right now does the upgrade and plugs in, will change with 20C or 21C in the process, how AutoUpgrade treats it internally. You don't care. And then does the conversion. But what if we want to fall back here? When you want to fall back for the upgrade, and this is why I always recommend the upgrade at first stage as long as it's possible, we can simply flashback. But if you want to fall back after we moved into multi-tenant, the typical option is we do export import with data pump, and then we can use Golden Gate on top to decrease the downtime. Now the multi-tenant team, when we criticized that, had a proposal and said, you can do this. It works from 12.102 on. You upgrade, compatible, first step here, upgrade, compatible stays as is 12.102 or 12.10. Now you create a 19C PDB, but you make sure compatible stays 12.10 as well. So I plug in and I upgrade and run the conversion script. If I want to fall back now, I prepare a 12.102 CDB. This is the yellow one on the slide, which has compatible also 12.10. And then I can run the downgrade script in my petrol colored PDB in 19C, but has compatible 12.10. Run the downgrade script, unplug it, plug it into the CDB 12.102, the yellow one, and then run the cut reload script. So I leave it to you if you consider this as a valid fallback, but I would like to mention that this is a potential fallback without data pump. Still, your source must be 12.102 or newer, because this does not work with 11, simply for the fact that in 11 we had no CDBs. So fallback summary, multi-tenant is always a migration. Use the usual fallback techniques, usual fallback techniques don't exist. No downgrade, no flashback, only possible fallback options, data pump export import, Golden Gate on top, or plug into the source version with 12.1 or newer, but be very cautious about the compatible parameter. So with that part, One thing I have to show you because it's super cool, and if you are not convinced yet with multi-tenant, I show you that it's just 1.5 slides, and then we are done. Refreshable clones. I liked it so much because if you are on multi-tenant already, and let's say you're on 12.102 or 12.201, 12.201 is the minimum. I want to test the upgrade. So I create a 19C CDB. And now I create a clone. But let's say my PDB is like 8 terabytes. So this clone will take a bit. It's not like instantly there. But I will create this clone as a refreshable clone. So once it is created, I say, okay, now refresh. And then it syncs with production. And the cool thing is, I can repeat that. So I can refresh over and over and over again. So I determine the synchronization point. It's still a 12.201 PDB in a 19C CDB. Then I upgrade it. And with the upgrade, I know, okay, this is how the upgrade works. This is how long it takes. Then I can repeat the exercise. Of course, I can do this for live upgrades as well. But it eases testing so much. And it's so super simple and straightforward. I don't have to set up standbys to test with. It's just on the same box, or could be a different box. I use a database link between for the cloning. I love this feature. Really, it's super cool and flexible. And it doesn't destroy your source. This is also very important. So in case something goes wrong now in the go live, I can always go back to my red one because it still sits there. I didn't touch it. So I put this on the blog and I love this feature. For me, it's one of the most important and most underrated features in Oracle Database 19C or 12.201 actually, when we introduced that, and you determine the synchronization point. So that's it. I will skip the last part here because of time. I will go now into the oops, where we are. Here we are. So now you see me again. I'm still alive. I hope you are alive as well. And let me go now through the questions which came up here. Let me scroll up here. Good. Where are we? So this one. Age check is not executed by analyze. No, it's not. So that's a very good question. And we discussed this honestly internally if we should do. It has two aspects. First of all, age check gets updated from time to time. When we learn about new dictionary corruptions, age check gets updated and we have no capability to download always the newest one. We could include it, but the runtime of age check varies a bit, and especially the output requires, I think, still human intervention to check that. If HCheck comes back and says no issue at all, okay. But HCheck, for instance, will report also if you have migrated rows or such things. And so the HCheck requires a bit of like checking what is coming there. We discussed it actually. How to resume AutoUpgrade if I have lost the console job. That is very simple. I blocked about that and I removed the slide here for time reasons. You just call AutoUpgrade with exactly the same call as before. So AutoUpgrade minus config, your config file minus mode deploy, and it reattaches to your job. I tried a lot of times without success. Okay, I'll try this, please. Otherwise, drop me a message. I have a question that you may have heard a lot of time. What do you do if you are on SE? I can recommend a presentation which is still around there. A friend of mine, Björn Rost, he was an Oracle ACE director before he changed the lines a bit. And he released a very good presentation, Performance Tuning Tools with Standard Edition, free performance tuning tools. So check for ROST, R-O-S-T, and Standard Edition Performance Tuning. You find it. It's on SlideShare. I can't just put it on a blog. We have to sell Enterprise Edition, of course. Same with AWR diff reports. Björn has really done an excellent selection of tools. Like even ex-Oracle people are now back at Oracle release tools like SQL D360. which are fantastic performance tools. Pathfinder from TunnelPoda. There are so many really super cool tools out there which work because you tell all these tools if you have SE or if you have the PAX license, so they enable or disable specific features. Are you aware? Would benefit optimize adaptive statistics? True, yes. Actually, optimize adaptive statistics true. I had a discussion with one of the performance experts here in Germany, Stefan Köhler, a self-independent guy who lives in northern Bavaria. And we had a lot of discussions because I was on stage disrecommending the SPDs, and he said, oh, this is not good because they are so cool if you know how to handle them correctly. And this is the thing I have. So if you are a good performance expert, or if you have people like Stefan taking care on your databases, helping you, it's fine. But you need to know exactly what you do. The downside is what we had experienced in the past. Like one of my reference customers is Mobiliar Insurance in Switzerland. And when we upgraded their Siebel system to 12.102 a long while ago from 11.204, what we had is like, it looked great the first day. It looked fantastic the second day. It looked still very good the third day. And on the fourth day, after going live, SQL plan directives were kicking in because now the database had enough plan directives found and changed the execution plans. And as a Siebel system is a very sensitive system and it's highly active, this wasn't really beneficial. And this is why I stay with Stefan's recommendation, saying if you know exactly how to deal with that feature, it is good. But just blindly set a parameter to true is something I wouldn't recommend you. And support for TDE with AutoUpgrade for PDB. Yeah, that's a cool question. We are working on that. So AutoUpgrade works with TDE for the upgrade part. You just have to make sure that you're logging your wallet or your key store is auto login right now, because then AutoUpgrade can like do all the necessary steps. And when you do the time zone change, AutoUpgrade restarts the database up to 7 times. And when the wallet or the key store is not auto login, then it's a problem. Because what AutoUpgrade can't do right now is we can't ask you for your wallet password. That is as simple as it is because we would need to store it somewhere. We wait at the moment for a security approval to do a technique we have in mind. So this is at Oracle Corporate Security right now for a code check. And then in the future, we may be able to do this for you. And the same applies now to plugin, because when we plug in, you need to import your wallet or your key store into the CDB dollar root. And when you have your system and your sysaux table spaces encrypted as well, which we don't recommend, but technically you can do that, then you have to import it also into the PDB. And for that reason, so CDB and PDB, and for that reason, AutoUpgrade would need to ask you for your key store password. And this is what we don't want to have because it's AutoUpgrade. It's not do an upgrade. Now you need to put in something. Now we go on for 10 minutes. Now you need to put in something. This would be DBOA. No, we don't want that. We work on this. It's coming the sooner or later. I hope so. We need this also for the cloud deployments. Stay tuned. At the moment, AutoUpgrade handles the upgrade part with TDE. For the plugin, you need to do that. In addition, we have, I think we have this on our blogs, because what I want to show you as the final slide for today is, I skipped that one here. So I would like to show you the 2 blogs. I hope that I'm still sharing Mike Dietrich TE. And in my team, I didn't tell you before, but as Daniel tested so well for SimCorp, I asked him if he wants to join Oracle. So Daniel started his blog as well, DOH. This is for Daniel over behansendatabase.com. Officially, Daniel is the cloud migration product manager at Oracle. But of course, we both cover all sorts of cloud migrations, non-cloud migrations. And at least Daniel has put some excellent blog posts out there, TDE for people who are not used to work with TDE. And I have a blog post also how to upgrade with TDE in place. So you find this on the blogs. With that, I need a break now. Oh, there's one question. I have to go. Thanks a lot. Yes, I thank you a lot as well. This is the right word for the end. I will
Yeah,
hand over now to my friends because
yeah.
I would
So,
like to thank the people from Digora. This
well,
is really great. And Bernd, it's you. I would like to thank you.
yeah, we
Word to
have
you.
to thank you because this was again, as I know you, a very, very informative workshop. So in 2 hours, you managed to condense and pack really so much information that's really always great to follow a workshop from you. So thank you very much for that.